All right, Kirk Herbstreit has chimed in on Georgia and Texas, and here's what he had to say about the game coming up and a little bit about the one in the past. He said Georgia controlled the game from the word go, talking about the one in October. But now here we are in a neutral site game for all the marbles. Pretty impressive for a Texas team that was doubted and made fun of, saying, quote, they can't play in the SEC. Meanwhile, here they are in the Southeastern Conference Championship game in their first year. I just want to put something on the screen to remind everybody that the media picked Georgia and Texas to play in the SEC championship game when we were in Dallas. So I don't quite know where Kirk's coming from with the made fun of part. If he's talking about the 15 years precluding them coming into the league, yeah, they were made fun of, and they were made fun of for good reason. It wasn't by people necessarily exclusively in the SEC, but I think listen. This is a game that is important. It's I don't know who it's more important for. It's a good question, actually. But the winner of the game goes directly to the Sugar Bowl. They're mandated to go to the Sugar Bowl, and that's where they will wait to play. In theory, the loser of this game. That could certainly happen. It might not happen, but that's certainly what could happen. Texas was either the betting favorite or right behind Georgia the entire season in terms of who will win the SEC championship game. It wasn't Alabama. So I think a year ago when they beat Bama in Tuscaloosa, really manhandled them. That was the time at which everybody, and I mean to some degree, when Sark started building the program, there was an acknowledgement that Texas was going in the right direction with everything that they were doing. But let me just say this real quick about Texas and their situation vis-a-vis Georgia, Alabama. Texas should be good. Period. They should be winning national championships. They should be doing all of the special teams that power schools like Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, Florida, they should be doing great things. That they didn't for such a long time is an indictment of Texas, not an indictment of people pointing that out. So I'm not sure. Kirk a lot of times has to or chooses to talk in a lot of word salad, and that was somewhat what was said there. But like, all of these teams are doubted, period. It's part of the world that we live in, but it's not like Texas came out of nowhere. I mean, they were a preseason SEC championship game. That was what people predicted. And if Georgia were to win the game on Saturday, it would be exactly as it was predicted. And I don't think anybody's going to be making fun of Texas in that time. But Georgia's got a real challenge on his hand. I mean, I don't know if this is going to be a neutral site game. Sark is acting like it's not. He's probably right. It's probably going to be a fair amount of Georgia people. I thought the tickets would be more expensive than they are. They're certainly not super expensive. You can get in for about $100. When it's Georgia, Alabama, it's a significant amount more than that. I think it's very possible that a lot of people are just saving their money for the time at which you have to travel, because inevitably one of these two teams is going to be traveling. One of the two teams is going to be going to New Orleans no matter what. The other team will be hosting a game, and then very possibly traveling to either New Orleans again. It is disturbing to me in the world we live in that these two would play in the quarterfinals. Like, you've got 4 matchups, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to choose that and like throw your hands up and say the rules dictate. No, it just shows that the committee didn't set this up from the beginning the right way. And then they're taking a lot of fire. I'm recording this on Wednesday. They're taking a lot of fire about that right now. They should be taking a lot of fire about what their explanations for things. Not necessarily that Alabama's in. I mean, someone's got to be the 12th spot, and it might not be Alabama at the end of the day. It might be SMU. But they've not done a good job of communicating, of explaining, frankly, of picking or the explanations of things. I mean, when Miami lost to Georgia Tech, they didn't fall that much. When Georgia lost on the road to Ole Miss, I think they dropped 9 spots. It was insane. And so anyway, they've kind of given us this. I think they've not done a good job. But for Texas, I mean, it's a great opportunity. to play this game in Atlanta. It's what has in the past been a terminal game for SEC championship game participants. It's been a terminal game, all but a few times. In 2001, it was not a terminal game. Probably in 2002, it was not. But we know it was in 2023, 2019, 2018, 2017, and probably on back down the line. I don't know about 16 and 15. But there's been so many moments where this was sort of the biggest game of the year outside of the national championship. That's it's hard to say that right now. But then again, we don't know what we don't know. And, it's hard to say what I'm about to say and not be eh. It's possible Texas and Georgia are the best two teams in the country. I'm not sure I totally believe that, but I'm not sure there's a compelling case for two other teams to say that they are without one of the two of them included. You look at what Georgia's been through, which will do them no good on the field necessarily on Saturday. Now, I know you could say, well, they learn a lot. That's not what I mean. Of course, it could. But either you go out and execute or you don't on Saturday. And you look at what Georgia's been through. You look at Texas has not played the schedule of the rest of the SEC. They haven't. We knew that from the start. When the schedules came out, that this was a weak schedule. It's probably one of the weaker schedules for the elevated teams in the league that we've seen in a long time. Oklahoma got a bad draw as far as that's concerned. But they got what they got, and now they're in Atlanta. No one's disputing they should be in Atlanta. They should. But this game, it's hard to know how to feel about this game coming into it because in the past, as I've said, it's been such a huge game because it's been a terminal game. The loser of this game doesn't go on. The loser of this game is going on for sure. The loser of this game could win the national championship. It will be still one of the favored four teams to win the national championship, I would imagine. So, I don't know. This is just so different. It really is different. And that we have, so many more games to be played. You've got a 12-team playoff. That's 11 games in the playoff left to determine the national champion. You've got, I'll just include just the five championship games that will affect the college football playoff: Big 10, Big 12, SEC, ACC, and then the Mountain West. All of those games to be played. So that's kind of 16 games left to be played here. And in the grand scheme of the pantheon of those 16 games, where does the SEC championship rank? In the recent past, it's been like number 2 behind the national championship game because the semifinals, with the exception of Georgia-Ohio State, I can't think of an SEC champion that has been overwhelmingly challenged in the semifinals lately. Will they? And we don't know. We don't know. So, it looks like Tennessee kind of, just in my opinion, is jammed because of them not playing in the SEC championship. Now it appears will be on the road. There's some stuff that could affect Tennessee as well. The ACC championship game, unlike the SEC championship game, is really the tipping point game. Well, why would you say that? All right, well, go with me on a journey real quick as I explain this to you, because in the college football playoff, the ACC championship game can dictate the final teams in. Now, Tennessee will not really be affected by it because, of course, they are slotted where they're slotted and they're not playing. So the way that the AD from Michigan explained it, if you're not playing, you're really not going to move up or down. So there's that. But then the question becomes, what happens if SMU doesn't beat Clemson? What happens if, suddenly, so there's so much predicated on that one thing, namely that at that point, if SMU is not playing then the ACC gets bumped all the way out to traveling. Clemson would travel almost certainly as the number 15 seed or something like that, because they're not in front of Arizona State. there still are a lot of moving parts in this thing. You know, you got Clemson, Arizona State, and Iowa State all clustered together. What does that have to do with Georgia? Unfortunately, nothing, because this should be about who the best teams are, but instead it's who wins their conferences, and these conferences are not all created equally at all. I mean, I think the Big Ten can make the case, well, we're a better league. You're not a better league. Your top could be better than the SEC, and we'll see about that. But, you know, if I were to line up Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State against Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas, I mean, I would take my chances with the SEC winning more than half of those games. I mean, Oregon would be a pretty substantial ask, but I don't think that Penn State and Ohio State would. But let's just see. You know, we'll just see as time goes on here. We're watching the ACC-SEC Challenge. They ain't going so great for the ACC right now. And you know, but for Georgia and Texas, does it go back to what Kirk talked about at the beginning, that Georgia controlled the game from the word go? Or is this really about how Texas has been since the Georgia game, which I will put on the screen right now? And it seems like it's good, but look, here's who they played since they played Georgia. They played Vanderbilt and won by a field goal. You can't see it so hot, sorry. They won by a field goal at Vanderbilt. They didn't look real good in that game. Then they played the best game they played all season against the Gators. They really destroyed them. You know, the win in Arkansas was a little bit dicey. Matuzaka. It was very dicey. And then the Kentucky game, they solidly beat Kentucky, but they didn't crush Kentucky either. The A&M game, I think that was a good win for Texas. It was not like, oh man, these guys are not beatable. There's no one that's that in college football right now. That does not exist. So I think for me, in this game, you know, Georgia is just going to have to go out and play as close to as possible on the defensive side of the ball as they did in Austin. And offensively, they can play better. They can play better. And it may be that, you know, Georgia is a bad matchup for Texas. Like, you know, it seems like Georgia and Alabama are, or Tennessee and Georgia for Tennessee. I mean, it may be that, or it may be that, you know, Georgia just plays better on the offensive side of the ball and they still play the same way defensively. Texas's defense is pretty good. So I wouldn't get too pumped up about thinking Georgia's going to score 35 points or something like that. That might not happen. There may be a lot of Brett Thorson in this game, but for Georgia, all that really matters is, can you get out of this thing with a win? And if you do, everything sets up probably pretty well, because then everything underneath you can jostle around and you're not going to get Texas in the Sugar Bowl. Otherwise, we could be seeing these two play again. Now, we'll see. I'm just saying that's a very real possibility because of the way these idiots have set it up. All right, thanks for watching.